Fears of de-dollarization and hyperinflation after the recent BRICS summit are vastly overblown.
The bloc's de-dollarization bid.
Of de-dollarization.
As de-dollarization of the international economy.
Here are the top 4 reasons that the dollar will remain the world's reserve currency for many years to come. First, the BRICS bloc is meaningless. Second, they'll never create a currency to challenge the dollar. Third, countries are not de-dollarizing like the alarmist headlines would have you believe. And fourth, all of the real keys to the dollar's reserve currency status remain in place. Let's dive in. The first reason you shouldn't worry about more countries joining the BRICS is that the BRICS bloc of countries is fairly meaningless. It's not like joining the EU, which involves accepting common laws, accepting regulations, currency, and really aligns the countries together. The BRICS countries don't have a free trade agreement, they don't have a military alliance, and they're not working toward any common objectives. It's just sort of a random, meaningless grouping of countries that once a year gets together at a summit to talk about ideas that they'll never agree on. People keep saying Saudi Arabia is a game changer since they sell a lot of oil. The UAE and Iran also joined, and Russia is another big oil producer that was already a member. Cool story and all, but are they doing anything different? No. An alternative way to look at this is that the addition of these 6 new members could actually reduce the power of the BRICS to unite and challenge the dollar. China and Russia already have an ongoing border dispute, but now you add in Iran and the UAE, which also have disputed territory. Iran and Saudi Arabia don't get along either, and both Iran and Russia are subject to Western sanctions. So none of the other countries would want to align too closely with them economically or militarily. If they can't align toward common objectives, they're never going to accomplish much. That includes creating a currency, which is our second reason that you shouldn't be worried about the recent BRICS summit. Hear me out. The BRICS will never create a common currency to challenge the dollar. Besides the facts that they don't get along and none of these countries have any clout in global financial markets, the main reason is that China would never go for it. Actually, probably none of the countries would go for it because creating a common currency means giving up control of your monetary policy. Take the euro, for example. There's no more Deutschmark, Lira, Franc. They all use the euro, which was created by and is maintained by the European Central Bank. When countries like Greece and Italy have gotten into debt troubles, richer and more fiscally responsible countries like Germany have had to bail them out. Do you think China wants to give up their control over their monetary policy and trust governments like Argentina, Ethiopia, and Egypt to make sound fiscal spending decisions? Absolutely not. All 3 of these countries are on the verge of a financial crisis right now. China has some of the tightest capital controls of any major country in the world, and they have their own debt problems to worry about. A common currency is just never, ever going to be created by the BRICS. So then you might ask, well, Kyle, but what about just moving away from the dollar without creating a new currency? That is what the BRICS countries would like to do, but it's also the third reason you shouldn't be worried. The de-dollarization we keep hearing so much about is being blown way out of proportion. It starts with misleading, sensationalist headlines like dollar dumped, India just bought oil from the UAE in rupees, why this could mean doom for the greenback. But what really happened? Is India ditching the dollar for all of its trade with the UAE? No. Is India's trade with the UAE meaningful to the dollar? Not even close. It's about $85 billion per year of bilateral trade, compared to about $7 trillion per day in foreign exchange transactions using the dollar. That's 0.0003% of annual dollar transactions. Oh, and do you know why India is willing to accept the UAE dirham for some of its transactions? Because it's pegged to the dollar. The unfortunate reality is that fear sells. You cannot just read headlines and think you've learned something. They rarely reflect reality. The same Yahoo article with the alarmist headline said there was an 8% decline in the dollar's share of global reserves in 2022. So what do you think when you read that? That it was 8% lower than it was in 2021, right? No. It's declined 8% since 2002. You can see from the blue bars that it still made up 59% of global reserves and basically didn't change at all from 21 to 22. Even if it declined another 8% over the next 20 years and all of that went to China, it would still be 51% of global reserves to China's 11%. That would be in 2042. So looking at the Fed's more robust metric of international currency usage, you can see that the dollar has stayed pretty much steady for the past 20 years. Fears of its demise are being vastly overblown. That brings us to the fourth reason you should not be worried about the US dollar. So even if countries actually wanted to de-dollarize, they couldn't, because everything that's made in the linchpin of the global financial system remains in place and is as strong as ever. I mean, you could point to things like the US having the world's largest economy and most powerful military, and those things do matter, but they're actually not even the main reasons that it will be so hard to bring down the dollar. I'd point to 3 others. First, the West controls the global financial system, and it's not that easy to build a new one. China and Russia have been trying for years with minimal progress. Money primarily moves around the world using two systems, SWIFT and CHIPS. SWIFT is basically the language that almost all of the banks use around the world to communicate with each other when processing transactions. It's based in Brussels and largely controlled by the US and the EU. CHIPS is a US-based system that clears about $1.8 trillion of transactions daily. In order to use it, you have to go through a US bank or bank branch. Nearly every single dollar-based transaction in the world relies on either SWIFT or CHIPS, or both. Russia came up with a SWIFT alternative in 2014, but it's barely used for international trade. And China came up with a CHIPS alternative in 2015, but 80% of its transactions still rely on SWIFT. The second reason it would be so hard to displace the dollar is that there's no viable alternative. A reserve currency needs to be held in large quantities by governments around the world. It's basically like their savings. So to understand what qualities are important, think about the qualities you'd want in a currency that stores your savings. You'd want it to be stable, right? It's the same for reserve currency. If countries are going to hold a bunch of your currency or your debt as a reserve, they don't want it swinging around a whole bunch or losing a lot of value. You'd also want to be able to access it at any time, right? And use it to buy whatever you wanted. Countries also want to be able to access the reserves whenever they need them and use them for whatever they need to buy. There's really no other country in the world that offers anything close to the level of accessibility, convertibility, and stability that the dollar does. The third reason that it will be so hard to displace the dollar is that it really doesn't make logical sense for everyone to trade in their own currencies. Even if all the currencies were stable and easily accessible, paying for everything in local currencies will mean that you can only pay for Indian imports in rupees, Iraqi imports in dinar, Mexican imports in pesos, etc. So not only would every government and major bank have to hold all of the currencies in large quantities, which would be extremely inefficient, they'd only be able to use the reserves of a specific currency to buy things from a country that used it. If, say, Colombia bought more from China than China bought from Colombia, China would build up a massive quantity of Colombian pesos over time that they could never use. In order for that system to work, every major bank would have to set up currency swap lines to convert every currency into every other currency. It would be massively inefficient and a complete overhaul of the financial system. In the current system, dollar is the link that connects every other currency together. You can count on the dollar being stable, you can count on getting access to your dollars whenever you want, and you can use dollars to buy just about anything from any country. That's why the dollar is involved in almost 90% of global currency transactions, and there is nothing the BRICS countries can do about it. Check out the link below for access to my free investment training. Thanks for watching.